Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to this week's Productive Agent Podcast. My name is Tony Ruiz, and I'm the founder and host of the Productive Agent Podcast and Facebook group. Today's episode is entitled The Homebuying Process, and this episode is geared towards talking to consumers that are interested in buying a home, whether it's their first home or their second, third, fourth home, etc. I got this idea of doing a show within a show because that's what a lot of Andy Frisella's podcasts are about. So Andy Frisella has the Real AF podcast that I'm a big fan of, and I listen to that a lot. And he talks about having shows with inside the show. Sometimes it's Q&A. Sometimes he's interviewing somebody. Sometimes he's just doing real talk. But that's kind of the concept of making sure that I incorporate some of that into this show. I listen to a bunch of different podcasts. Agent Rise with Neil Mathwig is one. Hustle Humbly is another great one. And that's kind of how I got the inspiration for this particular episode. When I first started the show, it was geared towards helping real estate agents in the industry through motivation, inspiration, encouragement, and education through training or through tips and tricks, interviewing top producers, and learning from their successes. I quickly added a Monday motivation episodes that happen every single week. And those are just an extension of what I used to, or what I still kind of do through my social media, is a Monday motivation post. And I noticed that not only real estate agents commented on them or liked them, but some of my sphere that are on my social media enjoy them. So I kind of tied that in and created a Monday motivation. So that happens every single Monday, once a week on this podcast, on top of these regular episodes. Today's show is focused on the consumer. It's kind of the second one in our series. If you go back to episode 32, we had an interview with Eddie Hernandez, who is a loan officer here in San Antonio. And he kind of talked about the loan process and different things to consider when getting a loan. So I was listening to Hustle Humbly recently, which is a great real estate podcast, two awesome realtors in the Louisiana area. And they did a similar show talking about the home buying process. And I figured, that'd be a great topic to talk about, with especially getting into the buying season right now, as we enter middle April right now, and we get into May, June, July, and the heat of the summer. As the temperature rises, so does the home buying process and people looking to buy or sell. So that's what we're going to do today. Quick disclaimer before we get started. This process is similar in all states, but might be slightly different. Things might be referred to differently or be called different things. But I'm a licensed realtor in the state of Texas. So that's what we're going to be going over and what we're going to be referencing. So let's jump right into it. Step number one in the home buying process. And we're going to be referring to this a lot. But number one is you want to reach out and talk to your realtor. Call somebody that you know is in the business, that you know, you like, and you trust. All right. There's plenty of agents floating around out there, but you're going to want to have somebody in a corner that you can trust. If you don't know anybody that's a realtor, ask a friend or family member who they would recommend. All right. A reference of a great realtor that you know through somebody is better than just working with some random agent that you have zero connection with. This is a large investment in your life. All right, you want to have somebody that you can trust, or a family member or friend that trusts, that's going to take care of your needs. Excuse me. And not all realtors are equal. All right, so when you're searching around Zillow and you're checking things out and you see that button, click here, to set up a showing. When you hit that button, you're going to be connected to some random realtor that is paying Zillow a lot of money to be on their website. And they're going to connect. They're going to get y'all connected, and then you're not necessarily tied to them, and it's not an agreement that you're going to be working with them, but that's not the best way to go about it. Most people know a realtor or know somebody that knows a realtor, so I highly recommend going with somebody that you know, like, and trust. Feel free to reach out to us at any point. This is our full-time job, right? So you're not going to be bothering us, and we are never too busy to talk to you about your real estate needs. We know that you probably started looking online, right? When you're thinking about maybe you're currently renting, maybe you're living at home, I don't know what your situation is, but you go, you know what? I might be interested in looking at a house. You probably go on Zillow, you probably go on Realtor.com or something like that, and you start browsing houses, right? And then all of a sudden you see a house that gets you excited or you're interested in. Go ahead and reach out to your realtor at that point and say, hey, I saw this property on Zillow. Can you tell me more information about it? That's the best way to go about it. Don't click on that button and get connected with somebody that you don't even know. You also want to make sure that you have your own representation, right? A lot of people think, oh, well, I'll just go straight to the listing agent of that property and they're going to cut me a deal. That's not going to happen, right? It's possible for the listing agent to represent both sides, but more than likely, they're not going to reduce your commission or the price of the house. It's just not going to happen. They're probably going to take both sides and they're going to play the intermediary and try to negotiate on both ends. But you're probably best off by getting your own representation. The same thing happens with new builds. There's a lot of people that go, if I go to a new build community and I say I'm not represented by a realtor, they're going to go ahead and drop the price of the house. That also doesn't happen. When they pay a realtor their commission on a new build, that comes out of a separate budget line. It's usually out of their marketing budget. So it has nothing to do with the price of the house. All of that is just a myth. So don't be afraid to reach out to our agent so that you're represented well. Another thing to remember is it doesn't cost you anything to hire a buyer's agent. You call me up today, we start talking about what you're looking for in real estate, and we get you connected. I show you all the houses. You don't pay me a dime to represent you. So don't be afraid of that. Don't let that hold you back from contacting a realtor. Also, a good agent has a fiduciary duty to you and not their commission check. I was literally talking to an agent in the past week or two that said out loud to me, yeah, I won't show my buyers those houses because they don't pay full 3% commission. And I was kind of shocked by this, but I've also heard other realtors talk about that. I don't think that's right. I think you should show them the houses that match what they're looking for in the area and the price point, no matter what the commission is. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was showing a couple a house. It worked out really well. They were supposed to close in May. We signed, everything was great. And this particular builder had a commission of 3% as long as something closed by the end of May. Well, we ended up having to relocate them to a different community, same house, same builder, just a different community, but that house isn't going to close until June. Well, what ended up happening was because of the deal, I'm only going to get 2% commission on that closing because it's after May 31st, which I think sucks. You know, I'm not going to lie. It sucks that I brought them to the builder. The builder is going to kind of screw me over in that, but I'm not going to cry a river about it. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just going to suck it up because it's the best house for that buyer, right? My fiduciary duty is to that buyer. That's a better community for them. And it's the right house in the right location. Whether it closes a little bit later, it is what it is. So I highly encourage you to choose wisely. Choose somebody who you know, like, and trust, or a family member or friend that can refer you to somebody that they know, like, and trust. So that's really step one, is getting in contact with a great realtor. Once you get that all lined up, let's jump into step two. Know your budget, right? How much do you feel comfortable paying every single month, right? You know what you pay in rent right now. Well, typically, especially if you're going from a 1-bed, 1-bath, rent is pretty reasonable. But as soon as you start getting into a 2-bed or 3-bed apartment, that rent goes pretty high, and more than likely you can get a mortgage for the same amount or less a lot of times. But know what your budget is. Know how much you can afford to pay for your monthly mortgage. I'll tell you right now, when you go online, which you probably already have, especially if you're looking at houses online, those online mortgage calculators are not the most accurate thing in the world. You should ask a realtor to run some numbers and say, hey, I only want to spend $2,000 a month on my mortgage. How much house can I buy? Right? We can quickly type that up and get that information to you quickly. A lot of the times, this online mortgage calculators don't account for taxes and insurance. It's usually just, here's your principal and interest, right? So taxes can be very different from house to house. In the same neighborhood, they could be different, all right? A lot of the taxes are going to be the same, but it's also based off of the size of the house, the size of the lot. So your realtor is going to be able to pull up every single house and pull up exactly what the taxes are on that particular property. Different areas of town can have drastically different taxes, right? So again, going back to your realtor that you know, like, and trust, and making sure to say, hey, if I was to buy in this neighborhood, what is the tax rate? If I was to buy in this neighborhood right across the highway, similar location, it could be a completely different tax rate, which is going to make a huge adjustment on your mortgage monthly payment. All right, so make sure that you're aware of that. I'm going to give you a quick example of some numbers for today. So today is April 19th, 2023. I'm going to give you a quick example of how much house you could afford to buy. If your interest rate is 6.125%, right? If you put 5% down payment, if the tax rate is 2.34%, and your insurance is $102 monthly, you're on a conventional loan because you're putting 5% down. If you pay $1,500 a month, you can buy a house up to $180,000 worth. If you are comfortable with a $2,000 monthly payment, you can buy a house up to $227,000. If you're comfortable with a $2,500 mortgage payment, you can buy a house that's worth $284,000, and a $3,000 monthly mortgage payment can buy you a house that's $340,000 in value. All right, so that there's a lot of things that can change with that. We're going to talk about that when you're talking to a loan officer. Once you have that mortgage payment figured out where you want to be, you also have to consider utilities. You have to consider maintenance costs. Also, HOA dues, all right, or how often are those coming up? Maybe you're in a neighborhood that's not in an HOA, right? Your realtor, again, is going to be able to talk to you about those different things. Don't let these numbers scare you, all right? I don't want you to freak out here on minute 13 of the episode and go, oh my God, I cannot afford a house and I'm never going to be able to afford a house. Number one, you're already paying a mortgage. It's just not yours. It's your landlord's, right? So we want to figure out a way and come up with a plan that can get you into a house that you love, that fits your budget, all right? And if you are planning on staying in your location in the next 2 years, I would highly consider buying a house instead of renting for 2 years. Because at least some of that mortgage payment is going towards your principal and buying that down. Your principal is going down as you pay it off, and typically, more than likely, the value of your home is going up, right? So it's kind of like a forced savings account is kind of what I equivalent it to. You're building equity and building wealth through home ownership. So even if you're there for 2 years and you get relocated for your job or whatever it is, you could turn right around and turn that into your first rental property in your financial portfolio, right? And then have a renter come in there and pay that mortgage, and that principal continues to come down and down and down over the years, and the value continues to grow. So now you're getting equity into that property and can do a lot with it. So home buying is where it's at to grow your wealth. Let's jump into step 3 of the home buying process. We want to make sure that you talk to a lender pretty quickly. All right. Ask your realtor who they recommend. A lot of lenders offer the same rates, right? These are kind of standard across the board. One is not going to be outrageously lower than the other, but the fees might be different. The cash to close, there might be some lenders charging some hidden fees in there. And again, a realtor sees these types of things on a daily basis and will be able to guide you through that and help you choose the best loan officer and lender to work with. I highly recommend that you work with a local lender and not go through Rocket Mortgage or not go through the big bank. A local lender is going to be able to talk to the person that's working on your loan, like the one person that's going to be the loan officer that's going to take care of it from step one all the way to the end. So you want to work with a local lender. They're going to give you the attention and the service that you deserve and want. When you're talking with a lender, they're going to talk about what the current rates are, all right? What are rates looking like today? Those rates change all the time, sometimes drastically, sometimes not. They're floating around here. But once you find a house, you're able to lock in that rate. They're also going to talk to you about buy-down programs. They're going to talk to you about really everything. A good lender should give you all of the options. Maybe you qualify for a down payment assistance program. Right? Of course, there's different variables. So they're going to show you all these things, and you're going to pick the best option for you with their guidance and with your realtor's guidance. They're going to talk about debt to income. This is a big one because this is going to kind of tell us how much you can afford to buy. All right? Do you have a lot of school debt? Do you have 2 or 3 cars that you're paying on? Is your income not necessarily match up with being able to buy and have a hefty mortgage payment? If you have very little debt, you're probably going to qualify for quite a bit. If you have a lot of debt, you might not qualify for everything that you want to qualify for. So even though you make a lot of income, that's awesome. But if you have a lot of debt, that kind of cancels it out. They're going to talk about all those numbers for you. You're also going to need W-2s. You're going to need pay stubs. You're going to need proof of income. Even if you are self-employed like myself, realtor, there's different ways around that. So talking to a lender and figuring that out is what we want to do. They'll be able to tell you everything that you need to get you qualified. When they run the numbers, they're going to tell you exactly what you're qualified for, all right? And you might qualify for more than what you actually want to spend. There's been plenty of cases where, let's just say, hey, you qualify for $400,000 worth of home, right? But do you want to be paying that much monthly payments? You have to pick and choose what you want. That's always a good thing that you're qualified for more than you want. But you have to decide how much you want to pay monthly. You might actually not qualify for as much as you want. You might find a house that's $400,000 and has everything that you want in it, but you only qualify for $350,000. Well, they might be able to tell you that, hey, if you pay off this debt, and this debt, then obviously that frees up some monthly payments so that you can afford that $400,000 house. So they're going to be able to guide you every step of the way. You might need a plan to pay off those debts or work on your credit score. Maybe your debt to income is pretty good, but your credit needs work. If you pay off a couple things and your credit score bumps up quite a bit, then we could get you a better interest rate. So if you don't have this conversation with a lender, you just will never know where you're at. So pick up the phone, talk to your realtor, have your realtor connect you with a loan officer that they trust, all right? And start these conversations, whether you're buying in the next month or you're not buying a year from now. It's never too early to talk with a lender. A good lender is going to give you options and guide you every step of the way. Couple things to think about as far as how much is this going to actually cost me, money out of my pocket. Number one, you're going to have to come up with a down payment, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And the other thing that a lot of people don't consider is the closing cost involved, right? Closing costs can range from $5,000 to $8,000 or more on top of your down payment. Both of these two numbers combined equals your cash to close, right? So we're going to really want to consider how much money do I need to bring to the table to close on this property, right? And that's super important. Working together with yourself, your realtor, and your lender is going to get you the best deal, and you're going to understand the numbers better. Step 4, once we get you pre-qualified, we're moving right along here. We're going to start the home search, right? We're going to figure out what you're looking for in a home. What are you wanting and what are you needing in a house, right? One of the most important things to figure out is how many beds do I need? How many baths do I want or need, right? Do I want a 1-story or a 2-story, or am I open to whatever? Do I need a garage? Do I need a 2-car garage or a 3-car garage? Do I want a pool or no pool? These are just some examples. How about a covered patio? Is that important to you? Do you want a house that's move-in ready, or are you okay with fixing up a couple things as you move in? Are you a fan of carpet, or do you not want any carpet? How big of a lot do you want? What are the living spaces like? Do you need an office space? How about closet space? Do you like the open floor plan or a little bit more traditional? Right? So all of these are just give you some examples as to things to think about that are going to help your realtor help you find the house you're looking for. All right. And you want to kind of consider, are you only looking at pre-owned homes, or would you consider a new build? All right. There's pros and cons to both. We won't get into all that right now. But are you open to new builds? That might be the way to go for you. Do you only want pre-owned? That might be the best way. I would highly encourage you to check out the neighborhoods. So start figuring out, where do you want to live? Are schools important to you? Are the grocery stores important to you? How close are you to shopping, restaurants, those types of things? Do you want to get away, into the hill country? Figure out what it is that you like or don't like about particular areas and neighborhoods that you're interested in living in. Once we figure all that out, a good agent is going to help you figure out why you want those things. That's like the most important thing, is why do you need or want these things? And then we're going to kind of guide you. Once I set that up, I set you up on an automatic search. And the reason I do this is because I'm not sitting in front of my computer all the times. I might be out showing houses. I might be doing listing appointments. I might be doing other things running around. But I want the computer and the MLS to do an automatic search, usually 2 times a day for me. And that's going to make sure that we don't miss anything, right? You're going to find out as soon as something hits the market, you're going to know about it, and we're not going to miss anything. On top of that, part of my day is I go in and kind of look through your search, especially when you're actively looking, all right? And we're showing houses, on a weekly basis. I'm going to do what I call as the matchmaker process, which I got from Agent Ruiz and Neil Mathwig. But we'll go in, and obviously you're working a full-time job more than likely. Yes, you're seeing the emails that I'm sending you through the automatic search, but you might miss something. So I know your criteria. I know what you're looking for, all right? And I can go into that search and kind of dig through on a daily basis and go, ooh, this one looks really good. Maybe they just missed this one. Maybe I'm going to remind them to go check this out online and see if they like it or not, right? So you want somebody that's actively searching with you and helping you find what it is that you're looking for. You're probably also going to see stuff on Zillow. I get this all the time. They're like, well, I see this house on Zillow, but I don't see it on your search. And I said, well, send me the property. Don't be embarrassed to send me that. Send it over and I'll take a look at it. More than likely, it's not available anymore, right? Zillow doesn't update their stuff super quick. So it might have been available, a week ago, and then it was under contract, but Zillow hasn't updated that. So it might look like it's available, but more than likely it's not. But go ahead and send your agent that anyways, just so that they can take a look and make sure that they're not missing anything as well. Once we do that, we schedule showings. So we're getting properties. We're looking at properties on a daily basis. We're looking through photos, information. We see something that we like. Through my MLS, they're able to click a green/interested button. So I encourage them, hey, if you see something that you like, go ahead and click that button, and it's going to automatically notify me via email so I know that you liked a property. From there, I'll give you a call. I'll send you a text, whatever it is, so that we can set up a time that's convenient for you and I to go look at the property in person and see if it's something that we're seriously interested in. Pretty simple, all right? And that's how that works, typically through online. Sometimes I'll just get a text message, hey, I'm interested in this property, and then I'll go in and check it out and see if it's available. When I'm setting up showings, I learned this from my first broker, but he liked to say 4 and no more. Right. And that's what I try to stick to. It just depends on the situation. But if the buyer is here local and they're living here, working here, I try to only show them 4 houses a day. And there's a couple reasons for this. Number one, it avoids confusion. So when you start seeing 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 houses in a day, they all kind of run together. You're like, I don't even remember what the second house was that I looked at. Right? So it avoids confusion. We're only going to focus on 4 a day. It also helps me and the buyer focus on the ones that you really like. All right. So sometimes I'll have a buyer go in there and like 20 different properties. Interested. All right. And then I go, okay, that's awesome. Thank you. You marked that for whatever reason you decided. Now go in there and pick your top 4. So that way we can go see those immediately, because we don't want to focus on your number 10 through 12. All right. And then all of a sudden your top choices are already under contract. We don't want to miss out on them, that those could have been the house of your dreams. So we kind of pinpoint, like, what's your top 4? Okay, none of those worked out. Okay, what's number 5 through 8? Okay, so now we really have narrowed it down to doing that. Also, as a buyer's agent, it helps me work with multiple buyers in a day, right? So I might have blocked off, 2 or 3 hours to show some houses. Then I can grab lunch, and then I have other buyers that I can do 2 or 3 hours later that day, whatever that is. But I'm working with multiple clients at a time, and that just helps the buyer and myself really focus in on what we want to look at. A good agent's going to point out things. So when you're on the showing, you're going to look around the house, open it up, look at the inside, look at the outside. A good agent is going to be able to point out some red flags. They're also going to be able to point out some touches, right? So let's face it, you might even be like on your 20th showing with this agent, but this agent has shown hundreds of properties in their experience, in their time in the business, right? So they've seen quite a bit. So they go, hey, I've seen that before. Hey, we need to watch out for that. So those are super important things that an agent can help point out to you during the actual showing. Other things that they're going to be able to provide are seller's disclosure, right? So we can pull up the seller's disclosure, and we can, usually it says, how old the roof is, right? Are there any problems with the house? Have they experienced any damage to the house in their time of ownership? So that's all going to be listed on a seller's disclosure. We're also going to be able to typically pull up the survey of the property and know exactly where the property lines are at, right? And see if anything has changed, see what it backs up to, and see how much property are you actually purchasing if you bought this property. An agent is also going to be able to run comps, right? Comps are just comparison and sales. So we can pull up that neighborhood and similar properties and go, hey, in the past 3 months, these are all of the houses that have sold in this neighborhood. These are the prices that they sold. This is how long they were on the market, and all of the details of that. So we're going to be able to tell you all of this information that Zillow can't really tell you exactly, right? So that's another important reason to have an agent represent you and take you through this process. An agent will then, you find a house that you really like and you go, hey, I'm very interested in this house. I think I want to put an offer on this house. Awesome, cool, let's get this going. What that agent should do is they should call the listing agent pretty much immediately and find out anything they can about that listing, right? About that property. Are we in a multiple offer situation? How much interest have we had on the property, right? What is important to the seller as we're writing up an offer on this? Do they need to move out by a certain date? Do they need a lease back? Are they open to seller concessions? How many days on the market has this been on? What's the urgency that the seller has to sell this house? So those types of communications are vital to writing up a great offer that's going to get accepted. Step 5, when we're submitting an offer, we looked at 4 houses. We nailed it on the first day. It was that third house that we fell in love with. It's amazing. We're putting an offer. Cool, let's talk about that. What does that look like, right? Here's several things that are pretty much all negotiable that go into writing up a offer for a house. Obviously, number 1 is price. What is the price that we're going to offer? Well, looking at the comps that the agent has pulled up, we're going to be able to say, hey, this house is priced fairly, or hey, his house is priced too high. It should be here. We should offer X, all right? I would highly encourage you to, trust your realtor, right? Your realtor is not going to be getting paid tons more money if you're upping your offer by $5,000, right? They shouldn't be trying to fill their pockets with as much commission as they can get. They should be looking at your best interest. And sometimes your best interest might be, I really want this house. What do I have to do to get it? Right. So coming in and saying, hey, it should be offered at 300, but you go, hey, I really want to offer 250. Well, a good agent would say, hey, look, I represent you and I'll do what you want me to do, but 250 is way too low and you don't want to offend the seller. All right. So we should really be at this number. So they know how to work a deal. They know how to get your offer accepted at a good, healthy price. So trust them in that. Another thing that we have to figure out is the earnest money. Earnest money is pretty standard. Earnest money is typically 1% of the purchase price, right? And this is money that's kind of upfront and pretty much takes the house off the market and puts it in your name, right? Once that offer is accepted, you turn in your earnest money, no other buyer can come in and get that house from you, right? Unless y'all break the contract and get out of it, which we'll talk about here in a second. So that earnest money, once you put that 1%, it holds that house in your name as you're moving forward, and it does go towards your down payment and closing costs. So make sure that you understand that it's not just thrown away. If you conclude and actually close on the house, it is contributed to your closing cost at the end. Option money is important. Option period is important. So at the beginning of a contract, you're going to come up with how many days of option period do you want. Typically, I've seen 5 days, 7 days, maybe even 10 days. It just depends on the market where that might be at. Let's just say it's a 7-day option period, right? And sometimes I see $10 a day. Sometimes I see $20 a day. Sometimes I just see a round number, right? But let's just say we're going to go a 5-day option and we're going to do $100 to purchase that option. The reason that's important is because that gives you a 5-day window to do all of your inspections, to make sure you do all of your homework on the property and you feel comfortable moving forward with the purchase of this house. So that's what you're buying that for. If you go forward and buy the house and close, that money is also contributed to your final closing costs. So your earnest money and option money are due 3 days after you go under contract, right? But as long as you move forward with the contract and close, it is contributed to your final closing costs at the closing table. Title and survey is something that we have to decide how we're going to handle that. Most of the time, the seller pays for that. Depending on if you're in multiple offer situation, the buyer might end up paying for that. A lot of times, the survey that they have on the property, if they still have one, will transfer. But sometimes the property won't have a survey, so somebody's going to have to pay the $300 to $500 for a new survey to be done. So that's something to be negotiated on the contract. HOA addendum, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, but you got to figure out who are y'all in an HOA? Is it required? Is it required to have an HOA? And who's going to pay for those documents? Home warranty. Are you going to ask the seller to pay for a home warranty, or are you going to take that on yourself? When is the closing date going to be? Typically, it's 30 days from when you write the contract, but if you're a cash deal, it could be as soon as 10 days. Seller contributions is another great thing that's going on right now. Do you want to ask the seller to contribute towards some of your closing costs to help save some money out of pocket? If B, it needs to be in paragraph 12A of the contract, right? Once you get all this settled, right, and once you have these discussions with your agent can write it all up for you. And you're going to need that prequal letter from your lender to actually submit the offer to the listing agents. So it's quite a bit goes into this. On top of that, if you're financing the property, all right, then you're going to need a third-party addendum on top of the contract. If you're in a conventional loan, right, you're going to also want an appraisal addendum typically on the contract, attached to the contract, meaning that this property has to appraise for how much I'm paying for. If it does not, we have an out or we can renegotiate. The HOA addendum, who's going to pay for the HOA documents and how soon are we going to be able to see those and look those over and make sure that we're good with everything. If you're looking at an older home that was built prior to 1978, you're going to have a lead-based paint addendum attached to the contract. If there's a refrigerator or any other, a table or anything that's in the house that's not attached, all right, that doesn't typically convey with the sale of the property and you want it to stay, you're going to want to fill out a non-realty addendum. So there's a lot of different addendums, and those are just some of the familiar ones that are used quite often depending on the circumstance. So once we submit the offer, we're going to step 6 now. We're going to go under contract. What do you expect once the offer is being accepted? All right, now you're under contract. The option period has begun. All right, if it's a 5-day option period, you got to get things lined up and make sure you take care of your due diligence within those 5 days. Earnest money and option money, which we talked about previously, is due within 3 business days. Right, that's typically 1% for the earnest money, and let's call it $100 to $200 on your option fee. Of course, this is all negotiable depending on the circumstances of being in multiple offers or not. That money needs to be turned into the title company within 3 business days. The inspection needs to be scheduled, and a good agent will have an inspection team that they can set up and schedule that for you. That's usually going to cost $500 to $600. So really, this is the first time in this whole process that you're having to kind of come up with some money out of pocket up front to move this deal along. So the inspection is going to be $500 to $600. It depends on the property. If it has a pool and you want that to be inspected, it's going to be more. So just making sure that you do all the inspections that you feel comfortable with. When you get the inspection report back, you're going to look at the issues with the house, and you're probably going to want to request some repairs be done to move forward with the purchase of the house. That's normal, but your realtor is going to help guide you of going, this is to be expected of this old of a house. These are the most important things that we should request. We want to make sure we take care of the important things on this inspection report. So your realtor will write up a repair amendment on your behalf, and they'll submit it to the listing agent. The listing agent and the seller will review it and either accept it or come back and counter. All right, and that might go back and forth a couple times before you agree to the terms, and then y'all both sign and execute that repair amendment. All of that takes place within your option period, right? For whatever reason, you change your mind, you can't agree to terms on the repair amendment, whatever the reason, you can back out of this contract within your option period and get all of your earnest money back, right? You would lose out on the money that you spent for the third-party inspection, right? And you would lose out on your option money, but your 1% earnest money would come back to you if you backed out of the contract within your option period. So those are some things to consider early on. Once you get past your option period, we're now in escrow. Step 7, this is mainly your relationship with your lender, right? I talk to my buyers, and of course I check in with them weekly, if not a couple times a week, to see if they need anything. But really, whatever the lender's asking you for, you need to make sure that you get to them in a timely manner. Your lender will order the appraisal, and you'll have to pay for that up front. That's usually $500 to $600 for an appraisal. Third party will come in and make sure that the house is valued and worth what you're paying for. If it doesn't meet the appraisal, that's probably a whole nother podcast to talk about, but there's some options there. Number 1, you could back out. Number 2, you can renegotiate the price, all right? And in a perfect world, you are paying less than it appraised for, and technically you're walking into a house with equity, all right? So that's just a quick rundown of the appraisals. Turn in all your paperwork to your lender that they request. Make sure that you do that in a timely manner. Make sure to disclose everything, right? If you're getting a gift from a family member or a friend that's going to help you with your down payment or help you with your closing costs, whatever it is, make sure you communicate that with your lender. You don't want any surprises. You don't want just a large sum of money coming into your bank account and your lender going, hey, what the heck was this? Can you explain that? So make sure that you are disclosing everything that's going on with your finances. Do not, during this time especially that you're under contract and you're finalizing your loan, do not go run your credit. Do not go buy a car unless it's cash. Do not go finance furniture unless it's cash, right? Don't rack up debt by traveling the world and running up your credit card bills. That's going to affect your debt to income, right? So you don't want to do that. You just kind of want to stay low, live within inside your means, and make sure that you are doing what the lender asks you to do. This whole process takes about 30 days, sometimes a little bit less, to process the loan from going under contract day one to closing and getting the keys. You're looking at about a 30-day time period. If you're a cash buyer and you don't need to deal with that loan, you can close within 10 days. All right. We're at the final steps here. Step 8, kind of wrapping things up here. Final steps. The repairs that you requested are being done by the seller, right? And you're getting a receipt of, hey, this has been done by this company, or I did it myself, and here's some pictures to prove it. So all of those are getting wrapped up and being turned into you and going, cool, everything I asked for has been done. You're going to also want to make sure that you line up your movers and your utilities to be turned on for the day of closing so that you have everything up and running for when you move in. During this time, especially towards the end, the title company will be working with the lender closely to finalize all your numbers. You should, 3 days before closing, have all of that wrapped up and know exactly how much cash to close you're going to be bringing to the table to sign over and get your keys. You need to make sure that you bring a valid ID and a cashier's check, or you can wire the funds to the title company, whatever you feel comfortable with. Whatever amount they say to bring, that's the amount that you should bring. Once you're at the closing table, typically different setup. You're not there with the seller. You have different times, but both parties will come in the day of closing and sign their paperwork. All right, that's prepared all by the title company. Once the signatures have been done, then the title company reaches out to the lender and request funding. So the lender has to come back and approve funding, all right? And that's when the keys are turned over to the new owner. So once it's finalized, everything is signed up, and the lender has approved funding, then it's a final closing. And congratulations, you just bought a house, right? So that's a long process. There's a lot to get to, but those are your final steps of making sure everything's going through. I forgot to mention, usually a day before or the day of, you'll do a final walkthrough yourself with your buyer's agent. You'll line that up and go, hey, let's go take a look at the property, make sure there was no damage done when they were moving out, make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. Did we request them to leave the washer, dryer, and refrigerator? Did they leave it? Those types of things. But you'll want to make sure that you do a final walkthrough before you go sign on the dotted line, taking ownership of the house. After the closing, you want to do a couple things, a couple reminders here. You want to make sure that you go to the post office and change your home address. That's pretty important, and make sure you take care of that. Another thing that you want to do here in the state of Texas, they allow the homestead exemption, right? So this helps reduce your taxes on the home that you live in, right? So you want to make sure that you file that with the appraisal district and your homestead exemption. And a lot of states have that. Make sure that you ask your realtor about that. So wrapping all of this up, it's kind of gone a little bit long here on 40 plus minutes. It seems like a lot, all right? And it is a lot. And that's why you really need to lean on your trusted realtor, because they do this for a living. They do this day in, day out. They know what they're looking for. They know the process, right? And they're going to help you walk you through every step of the way. So it's in your best interest to make sure that you connect step one with an awesome realtor that's going to take care of you. So I encourage you to call your realtor, even if you're looking to buy right now, or if you're not looking to buy until next year, call your realtor. Say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house. Let's start the conversation. Let's start planning to purchase your home in the near future. So I promise you, if you reach out to them, you will not be bothering them. So give them a call, reach out to them, and get started today. That's the show, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot of value out of it. If you're looking to buy, again, now or later, and you don't have a realtor, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you through the process. You can call or text me anytime at 210-332-3467. You could also send me an email at tony.ruiz@exprealty.com. You can send me a message on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you got value out of this. If you did, share the show with a friend. Do you know somebody that's looking to make a move? Maybe they're currently renting. Maybe they want to buy a house but don't know where to get started. Share the show with a friend, a family member, whoever you know that's thinking about buying a house in the future. If you enjoy the show, give us a review, leave us a rating, and that would really help us grow and impact others like you. You could also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And we thank you for joining us today. Now let's get out there and go buy a house.